Thank you very much indeed. And that was a most interesting set of quick inputs. I apologise that we asked people to talk very short and they try and compress too much in it, and we've got lots of questions, and we would love to have lots of debate. Maybe next time we take a 2-day conference or whatever. There's such richness. It's really wonderful. I said just before the tea break that we'd try and come back at the end for another possibility to hear a bit more from Olivier and Elizabeth, and reflect a little bit on what's been just discussed. Let me just take a check with you all. Do all of you have to disappear poof at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
A lot do. Okay, so we're going to be very, very disciplined in the next 10 minutes with your help. And I saw there were so many people before the break who had their hands up, who really wanted to ask a question. If you're really disciplined, we can get in 3 people or so, a quick minute or whatever to make your question, have another response from Elizabeth and from Olivier, and then I'll wrap up the meeting. So can I just see a reprise of the people who wanted to ask Olivier a question, or Elizabeth? So we got one there, Jyoti, we've got Eva, and those 3. Okay, you're lucky. You got in first. So Pete and Jyoti.
Sorry, it's actually a technical question. I'm with the Land Workers Alliance, and over the next year, we're a producer organisation in the UK, small-scale agroecological producers. We want to look at analysing our national policy, our DEFRA policy, in light of a food sovereignty framework, and put forward suggestions to get enough people on the land to provide for our food security needs. And you mentioned that you'd been studying this, and some countries where they put together these national policy suggestions based more on food sovereignty principles. I wondered if you could guide me towards some particularly good examples that we could look at as we try and do this for the UK.
Thank you.
Yeah, me. Isa Krzyzewska, Greenpeace International. I'm working in Africa, and my question concerns how can you have coexistence of industrial monocultures in the one field and farmers trying to practice agroecology nearby? I mean, is this realistic? We know it's not with GMOs, but even with use of agrochemicals, how feasible is these 2 models that we kind of use to try and appease some of our opponents?
Lisa, thank you. And Pete on the end.
Pete Riley. We hear often that industrial agriculture is supposed to be efficient, but it seems to me on any measure that you take, it's incredibly inefficient. And I wonder if there's any recent work on this to expose this myth that fossil fuel farming is at all efficient, other than in a financial return sense.
And one last one. Do you want another? Chris?
It was to Olivia, really. I'm interested in the demographics. I met recently the Minister of Bhutan. In Bhutan, they've got money, they're educating their kids, and the kids don't want to go back to the land. They've got natural resources. It's making agriculture attractive to young people. We talked about it a bit, but I think in terms of choices, one of the choices is not agriculture. And that's the issue. To be realistic, we've got to realise that we've got to make agriculture attractive for young people. We've got ageing populations managing land. And so those choices, which are also important, have to recognise the diversity, I think, in the people who are on the land farming and who want to go there.
Thank you, Chris, very much indeed. So we have questions on those choices, looking at, in fact, what is efficient, coexistence, and what help can be done in studying food sovereignty. And Olivia, I'll pass the microphone to you first, if that's okay. Please start.
Thank you. Let me answer the questions in the reverse order, because otherwise I may be forgetting the last ones. So first, the answer to Chris, I completely agree with that difficulty, that it's actually tough work to work on farms. It's not attractive to the younger generation. It is a very serious problem. I think there are two things to be said. First, it need not necessarily be so, and to a large extent, if farmers were being better supported, if they were better organized, if especially they were treated with greater dignity and given a greater say in the design and implementation of the policies that concern them, it may become more attractive. And sometimes we have movements towards the rural areas, the neo-rurals as they are sometimes described. The Japanese government has a program of replacing people on the land after some months of training, for example. But that's one first answer. But the second answer, more importantly, is this. By supporting small farmers in making a better living, we don't only support them, we also support the other sectors of the economy, and we create employment opportunities in the other sectors. Why? It's a simple Keynesian argument. By improving the incomes of a large part of the population that today is living on the verge of extreme poverty from small-scale agriculture, we would allow an internal market to develop, allowing the manufacturing industry, allowing the services industry, the local service providers to achieve certain economies of scale, to have a market develop for their products that would allow them to invest, and that could become a virtuous circle, so that in agricultural-based countries, where many people are very poor, living in rural areas, investing in farming is also beneficial for the other parts of the economy and creates many multiplier effects. There are papers from the World Bank showing this, so I don't see it as a contradiction to invest in farming and to create employment opportunities in the other sectors. I see this as complementary. And the key is diversity. No country can simply produce agricultural commodities. That's very problematic for its long-term ability to satisfy its needs, but no country can neglect its agricultural sector either. 2 minutes left. The question of peat, and and we need much more for Elizabeth, I'm sure. So very briefly then, the answer to peat is, we agree that efficiency is a very tricky notion. The way efficiency has been measured to promote agro-industrial solutions as the right ones is to focus on labor productivity almost exclusively instead of total factor productivity. So that's basically progress has been assimilated to reducing the employment needed per volume produced, and that's a very not just narrow definition of productivity or efficiency, it's also outdated. It's 20th century, right? We need now to move towards resource efficiency rather than just labor efficiency. Secondly, when we measure the output of farms, we often tend to focus on one single commodity, which is the one produced by that farm. How many tons of maize are produced on 1 hectare of land? But for diversified farming systems, that does not work. They produce many different things in smaller volumes, perhaps, but the total output is what matters. And thirdly, that's the third mistake we often commit, we forget to measure efficiency not just in terms of output, but in terms also of the inputs required to produce the output. And farms that have more stable production, that use fewer external inputs, are in many ways more efficient than farms that may produce more per hectare, but use much more external inputs and have much more viable production on the land. So I think it's a very key issue that deserves great attention from policymakers. Thirdly, the question of Lisa, very key question on the possible coexistence of industrial commercial farming and small-scale agroecological farming. I believe it requires a very careful piloting of agricultural development by the state for that coexistence to be possible. Because today there's a huge battle, a competition for land, water, for seed systems, for investment, and not least for political influence between commercial entrepreneurs, farmers, and small-scale farmers. And small-scale farmers are the losers in this battle. Coexistence, in my view, is not impossible to achieve, but it requires that the government is defining family farming, small-scale farming, as an actor that has specific needs, that deserves specific lines of support, that deserves a seat at the table where decisions are made, and they must be in a position to define how to manage this coexistence with commercial farming, which has a role to play. I don't think we can do without it. Realistically speaking, they have also other needs that only they can satisfy with their huge logistical capacities, but I do think that this coexistence for the moment is not happening well, and one part of the farming world is disappearing. Finally, Jyoti, examples of national food policies that have been promising. We don't have, in developed countries, national food policies. We have some in Latin America. We are now more seeing some emerging in Africa. But many developed countries do not feel a need to have such a policy, which is a mistake. It's a mistake because, in fact, instead of a food policy, we have agricultural policies. And instead of multi-sectoral approaches to supporting food systems, we have one approach that is based on subsidizing big farmers for them to produce big volumes. That is not satisfactory, so we need one. And my report on Canada, which is the only high-income country I could study in great detail, explains why such a policy is needed.
Thank you very much indeed. Elizabeth, some final words.
I think I will give you 1 minute to just say some final words, which I'm going to leave you with. Finally, I really want to thank you, all of you who have been in this room for today, listening to the experiences we've been sharing. But my request or my emphasis is on strengthening our resistance and also try to intensify our mobilization strategies. I think that's the way how we should do. We should really try to strengthen our resistance, and we are aware that united together will never be defeated. Thank you so much.
Absolutely wonderful. I think all I'm going to do now is just simply to thank very much indeed the panelists who came to speak, and Graciela for chairing the second panel, to Jean, Rosa, Raquel and Christine for doing the work and making this thing actually happen, to Mama de Goita, who has reminded us that the discussions on responsible agricultural investment are happening this year, and urge you to read the report and engage in that discussion as described by Nora. To Olivier, my words fail me for your ability to be able to so succinctly summarize such complex issues. And I think that we ought collectively to do what we can to back your reports when it is published in March. We would be delighted to read it and provide some kind of backing, maybe through the press or whatever, of that report, because it's likely to ruffle a few feathers, but also please many other people as well. And to Elizabeth, what can I say to you, what you've just summarised at the moment about we're all in it together and we will be able to defeat them. Let me just remind you of the words that came from Yeleni Europe at the end, in this year of family farming and where food is very much on top of the agenda. We shall resist, we shall mobilise, and we shall transform the food system. Food sovereignty now. Thank you all very much indeed.